Stephen Hawking is the world's best-known scientist. His best-selling A Brief History of Time has made him the greatest scientist celebrity since Albert Einstein. But is Hawking's status as the greatest mind since Einstein just media hype? What really lies behind the image of this scientist superstar?
People seem to think of Hawking as having been created the way he is today. He wasn't. He was normal at first.
Stephen William Hawking was born in Oxford in 1942 to an intellectual middle-class family. Dr. Frank Hawking was a medical scientist who travelled the world researching tropical disease and actively encouraged Stephen's natural curiosity. By the age of 10, Hawking already knew he wanted to be a scientist and wanted to find out how the universe worked. Hawking loved the challenge of working things out for himself, but conventional lessons left him cold.
I think in terms of ordinary academic achievement at school, he wasn't regarded as particularly clever and never did very well in exams. All right, but not very well.
Inevitably, Hawking's natural intelligence put him top of the class, and he went on to University College, Oxford, at age just 17, to read physics and mathematics. But study wasn't Hawking's main interest.
Stephen never really did very much in the way of work. It was an era in which a number of people didn't do a great deal of work, but Stephen was outstanding in not doing anything and got away with it because, of course, he was so intelligent.
I once calculated that I did about 1,000 hours work in the 3 years I was at Oxford, an average of an hour a day. I'm not proud of this lack of work. I'm just describing my attitude at the time.
At Oxford, Hawking appeared to be living a charmed life. He was popular, active and effortlessly brilliant. His future looked certain, but things were not quite as they seemed.
Stephen walked in out of the blue, and so we agreed to have lunch together, and he bought some drinks, put them down on the table, and spilt the beer. Oh God, I said, drunk again, and it's only 12:30. And then he told me that he'd just come out of hospital where he'd had a whole series of tests. And they told him that he had motor neurone disease, which I had never heard of at the time, and explained to him that he would gradually lose the use of his entire body, that his brain would remain fully working, but that at some stage he would be unable to communicate with the world outside, and that eventually only his heart and his lungs would be working, and he would be essentially trapped inside this body.
Hawking's world was shattered. He was diagnosed with motor neurone disease and told that he had only 2 years to live. However, by now he wasn't alone in his struggle against the disease, and in 1965 he married language student Jane Wilde.
When Stephen was told that he probably only had a very short time to live, I think he was determined that he would leave behind him something of real value, and that was what spurred him on to start working.
My initial reaction to learning I had an incurable condition was that it wasn't worth doing any work because I wouldn't finish my PhD. But then my condition began to develop less rapidly, and my research took off.
For his PhD, Hawking was able to show that the beginning of time was like the creation of a black hole, only in reverse. Then, in 1967, Jane and Stephen had their first child, Robert. The disease was making progress, and by the time Lucy, his second child, was born in 1970, Stephen was in a wheelchair. Hawking's next scientific breakthrough is known as Hawking's radiation. It was previously thought that nothing could escape black holes, but Hawking showed that particles were escaping and carrying away with them energy from the black hole, making it diminish and eventually explode. Like Einstein previously, Hawking is now looking for a single scientific law that explains how the universe works. In 1985, Hawking lost the use of his voice and relied upon movements of his eyebrows to communicate, until a voice synthesizer enabled him to communicate using a robotic voice, robbed of human expression. There was, however, an unexpected benefit to this.
The first scientific description of time was given in 1689 by Sir Isaac Newton, who held the legation chair at Cambridge that I now occupy so it wasn't electrically operated in his time.
People found it fascinating. By now, Stephen's illness made full-time nursing necessary, and he came up with a plan to finance this, a bestseller. A Brief History of Time sold 25 million copies worldwide. Despite his success, he and Jane drifted apart, and in 1995 were divorced. Like Einstein before him, Hawking has become a popular cultural icon. But are his discoveries as significant?
I think the word great is a difficult one to apply to a scientist, and in my view it would really only apply to somebody who has really made a fundamental change in the way we view things, a fundamental new equation or something, which would apply to Einstein certainly, or to Newton. Stephen hasn't quite done that.
Comparisons with Newton and Einstein are just media hype. Among physicists, I'm respected, I hope. But I'm just one of a number of people who have helped shape our modern view of the universe. We all need to know where we belong and where we came from. I fit the stereotype of a disabled genius in that I'm clearly disabled. But I'm not a genius like Einstein was.
What, if anything, would he change?
If I had the choice between finding the theory of everything and regaining my mobility, I would have to choose the theory of everything. It is that which has given my life purpose.